Sorry, boo-boo.
We go. Very good. Bill, thanks for joining us. Brian, I know you're busy. Thank you so much for taking some time with us. Appreciate it. Kathy, thanks for being with us. Lee, if it wasn't for you, Lee, we wouldn't be connecting today. We'll talk about that later. Mark, I know you want Jeff to sign you on a record deal, but thanks for joining us. Niraj, thank you. Well, thank you, Brian. I thought I'd pull out the jacket just to make me look a little bit more like an artist, make me feel cool, even though it's 80 degrees outside, but thanks. William, thanks for joining us. Niraj. Dan. Hope all is well on the East Coast, Dan. Thanks for joining us. Randy. Thank you. We have a few surprises today from our guest, Jeff Blue. Looking forward to sharing those with you. Thank you again for being here. We're going to get started in just a moment. Now, I'd like to remind everybody to check out our Age of Personalization website and join the movement at ageofpersonalization.com. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, social media at Glenn Yopes to read, watch, share our videos, articles, and personalization outbreak podcasts with your colleagues and friends, and spread the word. Be something of something significant. Let's redefine what leadership really means. So I'd like to welcome everybody and good afternoon to wherever you may be. Welcome again to Leadership in the Age of Personalization live stream, whether you're joining us live on Zoom or YouTube. I'm Glenn Yopes, and on behalf of GLLG, thanks for joining us today. I'd like to remind everyone that this is a Q&A session. We have GLLG staff on standby to make sure that the flow of questions are intact so that you could address your thoughts on an open mic. Now, to submit your questions, please enter them into the Q&A module in the Zoom control panel. Looks like we're getting about ready to start. The attendees continue to file in. Thanks for joining us, Luis. Let's get started, shall we? You know, I knew intrinsically I had the qualities to be an A&R, artist and repertoire person, but I didn't have them on paper. I didn't have the connections. I didn't have the experience, but I knew that I had the talent and the drive. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the words from our guest, Jeff Blue, the guy who saw before anyone else the genius in a group of young musicians ultimately known as Linkin Park, who are combining genres and creating a hybrid mix of rap and rock, hip hop, metal, and electric music that propelled them to the top of the charts. But here's the big question. Do you think the discovery of Linkin Park would have happened if a record label was more interested in working with an A&R person that had all the proper credentials on paper? Or do you think that Linkin Park would have actually been discovered if Jeff Blue believed the people rejecting him in the band, telling him he didn't have the right background or the experience to recognize talent when he saw it? Well, I'll answer both of those questions for you. No and no. See, it's easy to see potential for success in hindsight. I mean, if you look back now, and think, well, of course, Linkin Park made it. You know, they're doing something so original. Who would say no to that? Well, the reality was nearly everyone, it turns out. You see, Jeff and the group faced down 44 rejections from labels, producers, and managers. Think about what it takes to fall down and get back up again 44 times and continue believing in what you're doing. See, when artists break the rules and smash the standards of the past with an individuality that takes someone by surprise, it can be easy for us business types to write it off as something that artists do. In fact, as something that artists are expected to do. See, we tell ourselves, but I'm in the corporate world where there's a path to follow, a fit to match, certain education and experience is expected, specific credentials to acquire. See, but that's why I respect Jeff's story, because music is a business which requires recognizing a vision, amplifying and nurturing talent, marketing and branding, authenticity and believability, and sell it worldwide. See, Jeff has his own story of breaking through standards of the past to find a way to recognize and activate his own capacity. See, Jeff is the embodiment of what it means to lead in the age of personalization. Okay, so who is Jeff Blue? Who is he? Well, I can tell you firsthand that Jeff is a good person. He's a good friend. We attended UCLA together. Thanks to Lee Lubin, who's with us today. He actually introduced us. You see, Jeff cares about others. He is willing to stand up for the things that he believes in. But Jeff is complex. He has a tremendous sense of urgency. His mind never stops working. See, he can see things that others don't, do what others won't. And Jeff will keep pushing when prudence says quit. See, Jeff has the will to fight back hard against the forces of standardization. Now, perhaps this explains the reflection that Jeff just shared with me before we went live. And I quote, "All dreams are riddled with roadblocks. Otherwise, they wouldn't be dreams. The only way to deal with roadblocks is to set up a map with alternate routes. The routes may take longer, but you will acquire indispensable experiences, enabling you to create your own road to soar to the top." You see, this is the mindset of an individual that is a multi-platinum A&R executive, producer, songwriter, music publisher, attorney, journalist, and manager whose acts have collectively sold over 100 million albums. Jeff received a BMI Songwriter of the Year award in 2018, or excuse me, in 2008, a Hollywood Lifetime Achievement Award in 2018, and a Music Influencer of the Year award in 2017. Now, in addition to Linkin Park, Jeff has worked with Macy Gray, Limp Bizkit, and Korn, amongst many others. In fact, Jeff has recently launched his new book, One Step Closer, From Zero to Number One, Becoming Linkin Park. Let's roll it, Paulo. Jeff Blue, welcome to the show.
What's up, Glenn? How are you doing, buddy?
Hey, it's good to see you. Really good to see you.
Thank you very much.
So before we get started, tell us a little bit about those I don't know, those electric guitars in the background. What's that all about? In fact, you've got that arcade game too. What is that?
Well, this is a life of a music bachelor who has a great dog, and you know, we have the arcade game in the background with 4,500 games. Not that I sell these, but I created my, you know, just kind of the vibe. It's got all my old bands from like, the past, like Zeppelin, Nirvana, Kiss, Ozzy, Stones, just, stuff on the outside of the cabinet. Got a Telecaster. I've got 3 Linkin Park plaques there. I think a Matchbox 20 plaque in the background. And of course, what living would be complete without an air hockey machine, arcade sides, just because it's what we have. And then we also have some neon in the back. So, definitely not the homie vibe, but me and my dog like it.
Hey, it's cool. In fact, speaking about dogs, it's your lucky day. The president
Really?
of Banfield Pet Hospital actually has a question for you.
No way. Go.
So, Brian, let's get you on an open mic so you could ask Jeff your question.
Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. You may hear my dog barking in the back, wanting to do his little round here. But yeah. Hey, how are you?
Well, on all the calls I'm on, we always hear dogs barking, and I have 2 cats that run around, usually in front of the video, so that'd be welcome. So it's pretty awesome. So that's so cool. And yeah, I love the decor in the back there. In college, I was one class short of a music minor, and I actually surpassed all the credits for music for a minor. Almost had a major, but I didn't play an instrument or I couldn't sing. So my guidance counselor was baffled on why I wouldn't do that. But I have an absolute love for music because I think it's just something so important around it. It brings people together, and it's so important in my life. So I'll stop there with that. So I love it, and I'm a huge fan of everything you're doing. So keep going. The question I had is, yeah, thanks. The question I had is, it's such a cool story, and appreciate your book as well. Just everything that you're standing for is so inspirational. And getting turned down 44 times, it's amazing to have the resilience there. And as you have, like, everyone on this call here, I don't know who's all on the call, but we're all part of businesses, and everyone had their own path to their position. And oftentimes what I find are people had to take that route of standardization. They're not activating their authentic selves. They're doing what their boss wants them to do, or the culture of the organization wants them to do, and they're not really activating, again, their authentic selves. So you have a bunch of people here who probably, I would say, I'll be so bold to say, aren't activating on their authentic selves, and they're probably not doing what they would want to do if they own their own business, but they're feeling that trap of the company that they work for. So having you been through this, like, what advice would you give to these leaders to start to activate their true authentic selves and not be scared of doing the right things because of what their boss or their company culture wants?
Well, something my grandmother told me, rest in peace. She said, the only way to be happy is to do what you believe in your heart, because if you follow other people's orders and their guidelines and whatnot, and you try to find that path to success, then if it fails, you have, a lot to be disappointed in with yourself. But if you follow your own path, then you can never be disappointed, because that's in, what your heart is. And I remember my first job, my boss had told me, he's like, because what have you done so far with all these artists? And I'm like, well, I really want to sign my own artists. He goes, well, that's not what we do here. And I go, well, that's a problem, because that's what my talent is. And he goes, long story short, he goes, I'll give you $10,000 or $100,000 to sign some acts, and I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. I can do that. And I go, here's one I want to sign, and they'll do it for $100,000. He goes, no, 10 artists for $10,000 each. And so I go, that's an impossibility. Yet when I expressed to him my vision that I wanted to develop artists, because even though that was against the grain of how the company and publishers operated, because publishers generally would not develop. And I had to explain to him that it would be more advantageous if we were successful to do smaller development deals and pay $10,000 instead of like $500,000 per act, even though it may take a little bit more time, that it could be more, prosperous for the label. And that's what I did. And I was successful at it because I followed my gut. And I followed my gut in signing the artists that had no experience whatsoever, but I believed in. because those are the only artists that would take a deal that was smaller. So,
So
you
Jeff,
know,
let me just interrupt here real quick, because this is I want to make sure that our audience knows the bigger picture. And then let's bring it back to Brian's question. Tell us your story. I mean, this was not part of the plan. I mean, you went to SC to become an attorney, and then what
that's
happened?
Lee. That's our other guest, Lee Lubin.
Yeah, but what happened? Like, how did you get here? Because this was not an overnight success. And I think this is part of where Brian's question comes from. You recognize that you were down a path of inauthenticity and finally found yourself to do what you ended up doing. So what happened when you were thinking that you're going to become an attorney?
Well, I think we all start off kind of leading an inauthentic life. And, you know, we were taught, you know, at least when I was growing up, you can either be a doctor, a lawyer, or a businessman. And, you know, I entered UCLA and just, you know, I got in I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon, and found out, you know, I was terrified of blood, and I still hate needles. So that automatically disqualified me from being a surgeon, because believe it or not, you have to deal with blood. So Lee, who's also a guest right now, and I ended up going to law school, and I was miserable, and I completely felt like I was trying to fit into a box about what I was supposed to do with my life. And this guy, Lee Lubin, and I, who did go to USC, I went to Loyola Law School, we started a band, and I found a lot of passion in that. And that's where my authentic self lied. And I, unlike you, Brian, I believe it's Brian, yeah. I didn't have any music classes. I knew nothing about music, but I felt I always loved music. I didn't really know how to play an instrument. I played drums a little bit. And so this guy, Lee Lubin, and I sat in our apartment, and we taught each other our instruments. You know, we taught each other a guitar. I bought a keyboard, and, you know, I knocked around on the drums, and we started a band. And I'm like, this feels real. And no, this is a long story, but how it worked out was I had a chance meeting with a fraternity brother's brother, real brother, who worked at a company called Geffen Records. And this guy was an A&R executive. Now, A&R people are the people that actually decide on who and what artists are going to get signed to the label. And their job is to bring people in. And this guy, his name was Craig, thought that I was a drummer in another band. So I end up in this guy's office. He's going, oh, you're going to have, you know, girls everywhere, and, you know, studio, and you're going to be traveling the entire world. I'm like, this is the best day of my life. And he's like, you know, you know, just, you know, sign along the dotted line. And, you know, by the way, it was great seeing you guys at the whiskey. And I was like, the whiskey? I go, Lee and I only played this little club called Madame Wong's. And long story short, the guy's like, you aren't who I thought you were, get out. And I didn't leave. And that moment, I like to tell people, is like, you never know when you're going to see a door that's open and you can walk right into your future. And one of the biggest things about any job or anything in your life is that, you know, you have to know when to be present. And that in that moment is when your life changes. And that is your authentic self. That is your truth. And at that moment, I was in this guy's office, frozen stiff. And there's no way I'm leaving this. This guy just promised me, you know, studios and travel and all the rewards of, you know, at that time was all the music videos of rock stars and, you know, signings and whatnot. And I said, what do you do? And he goes, I sign bands for a living. I go, well, how do you do that? And he goes, I go to see bands and decide which ones are worthy of getting signed. And I said, well, how do you get paid to do that? And he goes, that's what I get paid to do. And I couldn't comprehend that Lee and I were in classes studying to do law. I was completely miserable, and I was paying to go out to see shows to do what this guy did. So I took this guy's class. Literally 5 years later, I was teaching that class at UCLA, changed my life that night. And I tell everybody, always be aware that you can achieve anything at any given moment, and that you have to be aware of those moments in your life that are going to be life-changing, because they happen all the time. And I guess that's, you know, that really is my story. I out of law school, I couldn't get a job because I was in a rock band with Lee, and I had long hair and an earring, and people didn't want to hire me. Of course, Lee got hired automatically, I believe. And So I started a music magazine. And again, the way I found myself making a move inside the music industry was I interned for, I think, 3 different record labels. All of them wouldn't hire me. And they said I was overqualified. I had a law degree and I couldn't be creative. Well, right there is another roadblock. So what I decided was, well, I need to prove that I can be creative. So what I did was I started my own music magazine. I lied my way into getting into another music magazine by confusing the hell out of people and just started writing. And I eventually, with no experience as being a journalist, I suddenly was writing for Billboard, Entertainment Weekly, Hits Magazine, and I made a name for myself. And every byline said, by Jeff Blue. So that is the way I got into the music business. And I took those articles and would send them out constantly to record labels, all of which, again, rejected me until one company, it was the last company in the alphabet of the music business, was called Zomba. And they actually gave me a job, but I had to really force my way into it by being a little brash. And I also took the money that, it was such a low paying job, nobody else would take it. But I took that. And that's kind of how I got into the music business.
So Brian, how's that? Were you satisfied with the answer? Because what Jeff basically told us is he encountered standardization so many times until he allowed his own authentic self to create his own and his own reality that led him to the path that, again, created history. So are you satisfied, Brian, or do you have a follow-up?
Yeah. Well, I also heard that he said he didn't understand music and he was able to get a career in that. So I should go back. I'm hearing there's a chance for me in my music career still.
Well, you know what's interesting too, Brian? When I was the senior VP of RCA at the time, and I was working for Clive Davis, and I had written a lot of songs, and I was getting a lot of flack about, oh, well, you're not a real songwriter. And so I took a class. This is after Linkin Park. This is after working at Interscope, and I was working for Clive Davis. I took a piano class, and literally the first song I wrote after that piano class won a BMI award. And so it's also the ability to constantly know that you don't know everything. And mind you, this is at the top of my career, and I decided, hey, I need to be able to more effectively communicate with artists and be able to play, simple melodies instead of singing them, because I was doing the same thing, but having that ability to know that you can always improve yourself and to broaden your scope. And since then, I mean, I've written, many songs that have been in films and TV and hit songs. But yeah, the one thing I always got was rejection by everybody, 100% in every sense and form. And it was always the ability to persevere and just believe if you have the talent, and mind you, it does take the talent, that you have to believe in yourself and dedicate yourself to that vision and not listen to everybody else, because, everybody has dreams, and it takes a lot of gusto, I guess you say, and a lot of belief in yourself to pursue those dreams. And we're all going to get rejected, and you get rejected 99% of the time, but it's that ability to push forward past that and to go, you know what, it only takes one person. And first of all, that were 2 people, you and somebody else. And that other person is the one that's going to believe in you and see your vision. And hopefully they'll be able to see it through with you. And that's really all it takes. And that's all life is.
That's awesome. Well, Jeff, thank you. I mean, I can talk to you all day. So, sure. Jeff, Glenn, I'll turn it back to you. But the final thing I'll just mention. So, Jeff, the spirit behind my question is there's so many people that have not been their authentic selves to get where they are in their careers. And they're just afraid to do the right thing for their people, their consumers, or society. And I believe the leader of now is existing in businesses today. There's just not that many of them. And in being in that minority of speaking out for social justice, speaking out for culture truly being the top priority, speaking out for equity, inclusion, and diversity, et cetera, we need more leaders to be their authentic selves. And they're just scared because they're in that standardization trap. And that trap is actually taking away from so many people in society. And so you're an inspiration, keep going, but more people need to learn those lessons and connect to their authentic selves, so they stop doing what their boss wants or stop doing what their corporation wants. They start doing what's right for people and themselves. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Brian. And actually, just in the music business right now, most signings are based, I would say 70% on social metrics. And social metrics are what we put out there. You know, they're not authentic, really. And what's a problem in the music business right now, just to relate your question, is that people are more focused on the socials rather than the actual talent beneath it. And we're missing out on so much talent, but it's the ability for those talented people to really push, because it's harder, believe it or not, harder than ever, because social media has taken over as, like in music, is like the fifth band member. And that is something that, it takes away from the actual creation part. So I understand what you're saying. And thanks for the question, Brian.
And by the way, I know Brian, I think he's got to run. So I'm just going to say this. I want to make sure that you guys connect, because I think that you should find a way to inspire Brian to learn music, just like you did, the hard way. So on that, so thank you, Brian, for your question.
Of course, thank you.
You know, before our next question that's just come in, Jeff, you've said to me before, and if you could explain this, why do you believe that the most talented people are underachievers?
Well, I don't think the most talented people are underachievers. I believe that a lot of people just don't have the drive. And people rely on other people. And the one thing you've got to understand is the only person that you can rely on is yourself. And you've got to get up every morning. I mean, like, for example, during the pandemic, music completely dried up. I was managing 3 different artists. Everybody was off tour. There was no money to be made. And what I did was, I was like, I can't stand not being productive. And so I finished my book, which happens to be this. I don't know if you can see. It moves like this sometimes. It's called One Step Closer. Finished this, got a book deal, which everybody told me I wouldn't be able to get a book deal, believe it or not. And even your closest friends who are all in the industry will tell you, oh, I don't know anybody. So, for example, in getting this book done, I met somebody at a party who I went to this black tie affair on my own, and sat down at a table and just started talking to somebody. And sure enough, they knew somebody who knew somebody, and made that connection. And I finished the book and got a real publishing deal with Simon & Schuster and Post Hill Press. I also wrote a screenplay, which everybody goes, oh, you can't write a screenplay. You don't know what you're doing. And right now we're, in talks with a whole bunch of big production companies. This is all during a pandemic. And also finished a music docuseries, which I've never produced a docuseries before. So I think the underachiever, the talented people, I'm definitely not the most talented person here. And I will, again, bring up this guy, Lee Lubin, who I think is the most talented person I know. And he went into a path and dedicated all his vision to something. And it's Glenn and I's friend. I wasn't as talented. And I went into something where I felt a little bit more comfortable. I think it was a harder thing to get into, but my talent wasn't book smart and whatnot. I was that driven passion person who was just hyper focused on feeling like I belonged into something, and music was a place I felt I belonged. And that is also something I think that music is about. Good music makes you feel like you belong. And that is a true connection. We can talk about that later. But what music actually does is it gives us a feeling like we belong in a moment, or a sense of, we're not alone. And I always like the quote that good music either makes you forget everything or remember everything.
Powerful. That's Jeff, you're on a roll right now. You want a little glass of water or something? You good?
Okay, I've got water and I've got coffee.
Okay, because here we go. So Niraj, thank you so much for joining us. Would you like to ask Jeff your question on an open mic?
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for taking time. Really appreciate it. Very inspirational. Everything you have achieved, incredible. So just want to follow up on what, in response to Brian, you were saying. So it's important to be your self and just authentic self and not follow the standardization and all that. How you remain that on that course. So trying doing it once, twice, it's probably easier than, excuse me, having dozens and dozens of failure and rejection and still believe in yourself saying, no, this is what I am, this is what I'm going to do. Just in your example, it probably was much easier for most of the folks to just go back to your law and say, okay, let me practice it. Let me just have that standardized kind of living, which a lot of other colleague of mine or classmate may have been doing at that point in time, right? So how you really keep going and be your authentic self, even if multiple failures are hitting you. And just as a correlation to that, more importantly for our children and youth, how we tell them that, hey, this is okay, because it's very easy to just put them in that standard mold saying, hey, this is what you should do because this is where either the future is, either your money, success, whatnot, the typical success factor in society, in the community we live in, right? So just if you can shed some light on how to remain on that path and just correlate with how we should teach our children to be that authentic self.
Well, I had like 5 different answers and now I'm a little confused, but I will go back to the entire essence of it, is that I believe it all begins when we're young. And this is very important. And, you know, there's that quote that youth is wasted on the young, I guess. And the fact is that when you're young, inspire your kids to follow their dreams, but not just to, the dreams are too easy. My parents were super, super anti music. In fact, when Lee and I had a band, my parents never came out to see it. They were very, I did some acting. They were anti-acting. Anything creative was just like, you have to do law. If you got out of medicine, you got to do law. And so I did do that. And I did follow the things. And I think law was a very good analytical background for me. And I do use it constantly. And law actually helped me become a journalist, because what I was able to do in the writing I was doing, and the writing I chose to do, was based on the ability to analyze music. And again, I didn't have any background in it, but I was able to compartmentalize the elements: performance, musicianship, songwriting, image, whatever it was. And I was able to put that in different categories and write about it. And so I think the education's important, but I frankly could not get a law job. And that actually propelled me into really just focusing all my effort into music. The irony is, right when I gave up, I ended up going to work for this company called Zomba, but originally I was rejected by them as well. And I went back home and luckily got a job working for a music lawyer who told me, you better not ever take an A&R job. I'm like, I can promise you that's not going to happen, because I was rejected by every single company there is. I didn't tell him that part. But so I went to work for him for 3 weeks. And of course, the 3rd week, I got a call from a company called Zomba, and they offered me the job. And I said, bye-bye. I left the law job. So yeah, I took it. I was packed my bags. I didn't think it was going to happen, you know, so.
But, you know, Jeff, I think this all goes back, if I may. This is, I think, the question that is being asked is, when do you know that your authentic self is actually working? And I think you said it best earlier, right? You said it best earlier. You said, hey, when the pandemic happened, music industry shut down, no touring, no nothing. You got this book deal. You went to this gathering. You met somebody. What you did at least what I've learned, your authentic self is working when you have the ability to create and sustain a level of momentum. And what I mean by that is it's hard to know if it's working if, as one might think, if you're not making money. But my goodness, building the right relationships, recognizing that you are starting to see the value that you yourself can bring. And then over time, that becomes however you define success, that's when you know your authentic self is working. So here's the question I have for you, and thank you, Niraj, for that question is, when did you know that your authentic self was more powerful than the forces of standardization, Jeff?
Well, a lot of good points on all that. And I think part of it is I never knew. But I did, looking back, you realize that. And I think what I also did was I was also managing bands. I was playing in a band. And I think it's, I guess the generalized comment or whatever is you want to put as many irons in the fire and one of them will open. Well, the deal is if you put your effort into, like I describe it as, if your goal is like right in the palm of your hand, and then but you do X, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, you may not want to do these things, but they all have some relation. Like, this is the river and these are the tributaries leading to it. And if you do variety of things, all these ancillary things, one of them will trickle down into where you want to go. And that is what I've always done. And I didn't know I wanted to do A&R until I met somebody and I was like, this is what I want to do. I didn't know I could do journalism, but I did it, So it's the ability to know that you really can do anything. I'll tell you one thing I cannot do is play basketball. And that is a proven fact. There's certain skills that I definitely do not have, but music, I had a sense that I could do that. And I think being authentic is, I was going, I could write a better story than, what I was watching on these movies. And I sat down and wrote it. I don't know. I guess it's at the end of the day, you just gotta just do it because you have one life to live and take every single option that you possibly have and just do it. You have time. We all waste a lot of time dreaming.
Well, I'll tell you, Jeff, what you've basically said is you have to have the belief that you can see the opportunity and that you can then put that opportunity to action. And then through relationships and resources, get that opportunity to grow, and then you share it. And that's been the cycle of your life. You see it, you sow it, you grow it, you share it. By the way, that was the methodology to my first book, Earning Serendipity. So here is the question that we've been waiting for. It comes from Mr. Lee Lubin, the one that started this journey with you. So Lee, thanks for joining us. We'd love to hear your question on the open mic.
Sure. Well, thank you guys for having me. I felt, look, I got two friends in this thing. If I didn't show up, I'm in double trouble. So did you guys hear me or am I muted?
Oh, no, we hear you.
We heard
okay,
you.
That joke just fell dead. Sorry. Okay. No, well, I made a couple of comments. One, what I saw from what Jeff did in the industry was, even though Jeff went to law school, had a law degree, and don't let him kid you, is an extremely intelligent guy and had all kinds of options, he didn't consider that he had options. He approached it as though, if I do this or die, I mean, this is it. And I think, by the way, to clear up one misconception, I didn't have a job either at a law school, Jeff, but that's okay. But my path was, hustle for work too, and got where I was that way. But what Jeff did, as I said, he really focused because he didn't give himself the crutch in his own mind that there was another option. That and because of that, and everything he said kind of follows from that. If you think about it, because the roadblocks, you couldn't allow those roadblocks to remain if you don't have other options. And I think that's what I saw he approached it. And but the question I had,
but that's I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's absolutely the way to proceed with everything. You don't have other options. So Lee had a very good point, and in hindsight, that is how I approached it. That was all goals, and that's what I was saying, Lee, to the tributary effect if this is your goal, then you can do all these different things. I was working at the SBA trying to make some money doing law, but I was also managing, playing, blah, 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 writing as a journalist, all to lead to one thing. You have no other options. If your heart and you're a strong individual, Glenn, and you have that passion and you're authentic to yourself, you have one option, and that is to do your passion, right? What is authenticity? What would you define it as? It's belief in yourself, being an authentic person to your own vision and your purpose in life. So if we have a vision for ourselves, then we'll do everything we can to facilitate that one vision. But Lee, I appreciate it. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead, Lee.
No, please, that's great. And that's this was a question I had though. When you work with artists, they may have an image that they think they have to meet in order to make it. I have to be this way. I have to be that way. You look for, as you said, for the talent. But what do you do when you see somebody who you see as the talent, but maybe isn't actually being authentic to themselves? And you think the way that, they think that the industry thinks I should look this way or my sound should be like this, and you see they're not being authentic. How do you get them as sort of their mentor and leader to recognize their authenticity and recognize that's actually the way that they're going to succeed?
Well, I think all good music comes from the heart. I mean, there's a lot of artists that have other writers for them, but true artists create from within. And, if it's about, artists that feel they have to be or sound like something that is current, first of all, let's dispel that entire myth, because everything that you hear on, Spotify or radio or whatever it is that's trending right now was thought of about 2 years ago and been promoted and marketed and whatnot. So, for example, there was an artist named Macy Gray that I truly believed in. I never got to see what she looked like. So this is before the internet. I had to track her down. She was rejected by her publisher. She was dropped by her publisher, her manager, her record label. And I didn't really see what her image was. And when I met her, I had to convince her to get back in the music business. And her music didn't really sound authentic. She was like a Black Janis Joplin. And I heard this voice that had all these beautiful imperfections. And I said, those are your strengths, those imperfections. And when she sang slow and she had this neo soul vibe, I'm like, that's your sound. And it was just immediate. And sent it out, and people were just like, oh, we can't sign this woman. She's awful. Her image is horrible. So I changed her name and sent out demo tapes with the name Mushroom on it. And people were like, oh my God, this is amazing. And people are that short-sighted. And that's what we had to do with Linkin Park too. The same exact story is that if you are authentic and you have your own sound, don't do what other people are telling you to do. You don't have to do that. You will only sound authentic and true and make people feel like you're speaking to them if you're true to yourself. I'm not sure if that answered your question, Lee, but I guess what I do encourage them is just to go, look, focus on your strengths and let's amplify those. And the weaknesses, we don't have to, you don't have to sound like this person. You don't have to, just because you have the strength, don't overdo the strengths, because also we're talking about crutches. Don't use your strength as a crutch either. Don't rely so heavily on what your strengths are. Develop that balanced approach and don't worry about everything else. All you have to worry about is you. And frankly, I always tell artists, nobody's waiting for your record. Trust me, there's nobody out there dying to get it, So you've got time. Find out and do it correctly. Don't rush. And there's always, trust me, there's always a rush. Everybody thinks that, the world's dying to get their album. No, write well, create well, believe in yourself, and make sure that you go back and revisit and make sure that what you're doing is excellent and you believe in it and your whole team does.
Hey, real quick, and thanks, Lee. Appreciate the questions and thank you for making this live stream possible, bud. We've got some people on the chat. One is from Josh Connors. It said, Macy Gray, great live performer. Sandy saw her live too. So thanks for that. We've got Bill Husselman. Bill, would you like to unmute and ask Jeff your question, please?
Thanks. Sorry, I was just shoving down a peanut butter sandwich.
That's okay. Take
Thanks,
another bite. It's okay.
Jeff, thanks for your insights.
My pleasure.
So thinking about the person-centeredness of personalization, and thinking about some of your responses to the last few questions, which have really landed with confidence and pushing yourself and talent. The talent is key, but also the persistence. I don't know that that's accessible for everybody, and I might push back on that a little bit. It's a kind of bravado that I associate with cisgendered white men, and not everybody is part of that club, right? So it's not just a matter of developing and projecting one's authentic self. Part of the challenge can't be addressed by the person who's trying to make it in, the talent, confidence, persistence. When you experience rejection and stereotypes, implicit bias, stereotype threat, active discrimination, that experience, it depletes one's confidence and persistence, and I think it atrophies one's talent. So can you talk a little bit about not how the individual can break in, but what does everybody else have to attend to? How does everybody else need to adapt? Interviewers, leaders, bosses, talent scouts, producers, et cetera. How do they need to adapt to be able to see the talent and the potential beyond their own prejudices and beyond the prejudices that are built into the system as it stands?
Great question, Bill.
Well, very good question. I mean, again, I will say that I deal with a lot of people, and I believe it does come within first and foremost. And to express that, I have been a person who has always believed in the individual, but as employers and whatnot, I guess that's what you're asking about. Again, I can only speak to myself as always. I mean, I give people without any experience chances all the time. And I mean, that's just how I, found Linkin Park. A kid had never played a show, and I believed in him and his perseverance and his talent. I think employers and people that are talking to potential hirees, is that what you're asking about?
Well, I think if I may jump in real quick, I think if I can bring it back to the experiences that you had, Linkin Park was about as different as different can be. And I'm sure that there were, as your story has made clear, and I think this is where you can tell it, where there were a lot of biases against Linkin Park. They were way too different. They weren't the norm. So I think back to what Bill's getting at, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, is when there is so much implicit bias to something that may be too different, not the traditional norm. As a talent scout, as an A&R executive, how did you get a record label to believe in what was so out of the traditional norm, especially at the time that you discovered them?
They wouldn't, if that's what you're asking, Bill, and I can only speak in regards to myself. Record labels they didn't like them, and if you look at the ethnic makeup of it too, it was very different. There was, it wasn't your norm. The kids were, of variety of, ethnicities. They weren't the cool factor. Nobody liked the music. And for me, I just said, I don't go to work for you unless I'm able to bring this in. So if you're looking at, like, I could reference myself as an employer, and I was able to look at the true talent beneath. And I think same with Macy Gray. Macy Gray's image, nobody really got to see it, was very awkward. And my boss told me there's no way we're signing her. She doesn't look the part at all. And I said, we have to, because it's what's inside, and I believe. So what I feel is that as employers, or just as myself, and I'm looking to sign an artist, I have to see beyond that. And I've always been, I've been blessed. Maybe it's the household I grew up in, but I have always seen inner talent and inner personality. And don't look at what's being shown to you. Look at what's right in front of you in the inside. So I don't know if that really answers your question. And I can only speak to myself, but every artist that I've had that I believed in didn't fit the norm.
Tell us how, if you can, real quick, Jeff, because I can't believe we're already 50 minutes into this. Tell us about the story of Linkin Park. I mean, tell us from the beginning to the end, because talk about differences and talk about personalization that was really against the standardized norms in the music industry. How did that all unfold? Take us through the story of the 44 rejections.
Well, and I'll also say the same thing, Bill. I had this artist named Daniel Powder who, was not, with all due respect, the most attractive guy. And that was the reason he didn't get signed. And I had to really, he had the Grammy winning song, Had a Bad Day. I believed in his voice and I believed in what he had to say. And again, that was a very hard fight to get him signed. And originally the label did not want to sign him, period. Same with Linkin Park. The process with Linkin Park was they didn't believe any of them were every label. We had 44 rejections. Every label passed multiple times. Warner Brothers passed 3 times. And I was able to communicate with one person who actually saw the vision that I saw. And unfortunately, he was let go when I finally got to Warner Brothers. And I had to deal with another person finally after getting this band signed who said, I don't like the rapper. I don't like the band's not that great. And wanted to drop him from the get-go because he had already passed that 3 times. So again, it takes a lot. Like in that situation, I was almost going to lose my job and I had to stand behind what I believed in. So again, as somebody who is constantly being told, no, this is not good enough. You need to change this, that, and the other. You've got to be able to, stand behind your convictions and what your belief is. And that you just need that ability to show the world. So, again, I think it's all about what is inside. And then in terms of music, I always felt like once the product is done and the music is there, then the image follows that. I think the music kind of dictates the image, and the music is what comes from inside, the image is outside. So, and I can only relate this to music, Bill, but I can tell you that when the music comes out, all of a sudden you see the image form around that music and that confidence around what was created, because the music's inside, the image and the dress is all outside. And I don't know if you can understand that or if listeners can understand it, but the image always follows after. Macy's image became cool after the music and the record was finished and it fit the music. So again, it really matters what's inside. And I think we all as human beings need to see what is inside.
You know what?
And that's a powerful way to frame it. But so how does everybody else get to develop the lens that you've been able to develop? So like the rest of the industry, like why should there be that many fights to get talent into the spotlight?
Well, I mean, look at somebody like Lizzo. Lizzo's not, your ordinary look. I mean, I think that there are people and there are artists that succeed like that, so, a lot of it, again, is dependent on social media and what everybody gloms onto. And it's an unfortunate situation, but there are always those artists that are true and authentic and they do great. So again, it's up to us. And I can only speak for myself. I've always been the guy who goes after the artist that nobody wants.
Well, is this why you've become your own producer? Because what you just said earlier, Jeff, is that the industry is now basing everything upon social. So you're about the inside out, they're about the outside in. Where's the industry going?
Yeah, I know the industry is going to social metrics, and that's very, very clear. There are those artists. I mean, when I shop an artist, the first thing is what are their socials? What's their engagement? People want to know what pipeline money is going to come through. But same thing. I had this band, The Last Good Night, who we shopped to every single record label and rejected by everybody. So I actually got in the band, produced it, A&R'd it, published it, and we had a #1 hit around the world. It's just about finding that one person. Not everybody is going to be able to do the mold that we would, or fit the mold of the executive that's going to give everybody a chance. But as long as there's one person that can, for every artist out there, and somebody that's able to see it. I mean, it would be great in a perfect world for us all to be able to disregard image, disregard what's on the outside and look for the inside. And I think that's something that we just need to instill in ourselves, because if that were a quality that we all had, there would be a lot more talented and just general people out in the world that would have a chance to do things.
You know,
but it
it's
also comes
interesting.
from that individual, and I don't mean to interrupt you, Glenn, but the
No, that's
individual who's trying to get that job has to really push and show what they can do. And I do think there's plenty of stuff out there, or plenty of employers and whatnot out there who do see that. And I think the world's made a huge leap forward this past year with that as well. So,
well, unfortunately, Jeff, at least from my lens, I think they still have a long way to go, because as I hear from emerging talent, they feel that if they don't have a certain degree from a certain university, that they won't get on the fast track. So we're still very much about credentials and fanfare and fitting. Unfortunately, we're just getting started on this road to finding balance between standardization and personalization, which our discussion has been about today. But we do have a final question from Pete. Pete, thanks for joining us today. Love to hear your question on the open mic.
Hi, Jeff. I just wanted to ask you if you thought that your coming to understand your own authentic self was necessary for your artist success. So did you feel that you had to go through that journey first in order for Linkin Park to succeed? Or do you think that other people in your industry are able to not go through that process of understanding their authentic self and sign artists and represent artists that end up succeeding?
Well, I think that most people that are signing artists go after what is popular. And that's been the way it has been since I started in the business in 1994, 1995. And I've been a contrarian, whether it's in stocks or whatever. I'm just, you know, and as I said, I always take the longer route. I don't care about that. You know, Linkin Park never played a show. Linkin Park, you know, they didn't have any press, they didn't tour, no radio. I honestly don't care. I found authenticity in the band members and in the music and in the vision. The irony is we had to let go of the original lead singer in Linkin Park, which was you know, talk about authenticity. We had to also come to the realization that something needed to be changed. And that's a whole nother discussion, because when you're authentic, you can't just go, hey, this is it. This is my vision. You know, I'm not changing anything because this is the way to go. This is what I set on my course to do. You've always got to be able to take change the move, change the plan. If you encounter something where you actually question yourself, it's good to question yourself. And in this case, I questioned the strength of the lead singer, which is huge. You know, the lead singer is mainly the core of the band. In this case, there was a rapper and a lead singer, and I had to make that decision to find another lead singer. Well, that's basically, you know, the odds of doing that are 1 in a million, and having it be a huge band is 1 in a trillion, really. So I mean, the odds aren't that huge, but they're extreme.
Sure.
And I had to be authentic to myself and go, you know, the band didn't want to get rid of their best friend, lead singer. And I had to go, look, guys, this is not working. We've tried everything. Same with pretty much every single band. Like Macy, you know, had those internal issues. This band, Alaska Night, had them. We had to change the sound, get rid of, you know, some band members. In this case, it was a huge risk to get rid of the lead singer. And I said, there's something better out there, because the chemistry is not 100% there. And that was my authenticity, even though I wanted this band to succeed more than anything. I had put at this time about 2 years of my life into it. And I said, this is not completely correct. I'm not being authentic with myself. If I'm telling myself that, and I'm portraying that to the world, that this is what I believe in. So fired the lead singer. And as a fluke, again, I met somebody, or I knew somebody who recommended another kid who ended up being this amazing singer named Chester Bennington, who, in his authenticity, I call him on the phone in the middle of his 23rd birthday, leaves his birthday to go record a demo, sends it to me, and I'm like, this is our kid. And that's once in a lifetime thing. Who's gonna, you know, he's being authentic, I'm being authentic, and we're all in this collective moment. And it sounds a little spiritual, but literally the odds of that happening are 1 in a million. And then to have that kid be Chester Bennington, go and jump into a band where he really didn't fit in. You know, that's really about following your own belief, even though everybody's like, dude, you're going to kill the band if you get rid of the lead singer. So
Jeff, thank you, Pete, for that question. And Jeff, your story has been incredibly powerful. So much to think about. And Bill, I really appreciate you asking that question because, you know, it reminded me and your story too, Jeff, just about my own curiosities to challenge the status quo. And I know we've talked a lot about authenticity, but it's really how the journey of life, if you really want to live life, in pursue your dreams, you have to find those alternate routes that you've been talking about, Jeff. And to pursue those dreams, it's really about embracing the options that life presents to you. And when the door's closed, get people to discover what you're all about, what your self-worth is. Really focus about what's on the inside. Another part I walked away with is continually seeking discomfort and adversity. Recognizing that those are the things that prepare you for what lies ahead. And it's encountering different types of people along the way to get an opportunity to really know yourself and what you're capable of, and knowing of the things that people seem to like about you or don't, what seems to stick. It's about listening and learning all these different types of perspectives and attitudes to cultivate a real open mind. But most importantly, I think it's finding the significance and love in every moment. And, you know, it's through that process of finding significance and love that you start to recognize, at least from my perspective, and it feels the same way of what I heard from you today, is that over time, risk becomes your best friend. You stop being afraid of it because you've reached a point where you trust yourself more than the risk. And, you know, I've often said that entrepreneurship is no longer just a business term anymore. It's a way of life. And Jeff, you've, I think, inspired all of us to really embrace not just our authenticity, but the entrepreneurial attitude that lies within all of us. Jeff, thanks again. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure, everyone. Thank you very much, Glenn. I appreciate it.
And don't forget, grab a copy of One Step Closer. It's on Amazon. And you'll hear the whole story and all the different wrinkles from Jeff's journey. And again, as we end the conversation, and if you enjoy these different types of conversations, please, I encourage you to join the Leadership in the Age of Personalization movement at ageofpersonalization.com. Connect with our social channels, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Glenn Yopes, and continue to read, watch, and share our videos and articles and our Personalization Outbreak podcast. Until our next time, and I said this about Jeff at the beginning, when you lead in the age of personalization, you will see things that others don't, do what others won't, and keep pushing when prudence says quit. Jeff, you've been wonderful, man. Thanks, brother.
Thank you, everybody.